Have you ever been to a place where everything seemed too perfect? Golden chandeliers, soft music in the background, glasses holding promises of union. Such a beautiful setting that seemed rehearsed. What if I told you that, behind every smile at that table, there was a plan? A plan so that she wouldn't get out of there alive. That night, it was Christmas. But what Laura experienced, it wasn't a supper. It was a carefully designed ritual to silence the only voice that still knew the truth. And it all started with a note. Short, silent, mortal, do not drink anything that is served to you. You will enter a story where nothing is as it seems, where love mixes with poison, and where even silence is a loaded weapon. Laura thought she was going to a family reunion, but he was entering the center of a conspiracy that had been in the works for a whole year. And when you decide not to swallow what they try to serve you, whether it's a sip of wine or a well-told lie, the world calls you guilty. Because the truth, when it survives, bothers. And the price of truth, sometimes, it is being buried alive. But in this video, you'll discover something that can change the way you see every gesture, every word, every blood tie. Because at the end of this story, you may realize the greatest poison has never been in the cup. It was always in the eyes of those who expected you to drink. In the heart of New York, shrouded in a thin layer of freshly fallen snow, Laura stepped out of the cab with her shoulders draped in a cream wool coat. The white flakes gleamed under the warm lighting of the city's finest restaurant, Belvedere, known for its sophisticated parties and heavy surname clientele. As she walked through the glass doors, she was greeted by a breathtaking atmosphere. Crystal chandeliers hung like shimmering jewels from the vaulted ceiling. The soft sound of a piano filled the space with Christmas melancholy, and the tables, impeccably arranged, displayed gleaming glasses under the golden reflection of candles. The family was already there. A long table, almost completely occupied, looked like a magazine portrait, everyone smiling, all well dressed. But there was something about the smiles that didn't fit. Laura couldn't explain it right away, but that joy seemed carefully rehearsed. Marcos, her older brother, stood up to greet her with a kiss on the cheek. A kiss too fast. A smile that was too cold. Helena, the sister-in-law, waved her fingers, as if greeting a stranger politely. Laura disguised herself, returned the gestures, and sat to the left of her mother, who adjusted her napkin as if looking for distraction. The waiter who approached to serve water had slightly trembling hands. She was young, with a restless look, and for a moment she seemed to hesitate before looking directly at Laura. When she did, her eyes carried something she couldn't decipher, a mixture of haste, anguish, and something close to compassion. She smiled, as if thanking him for the service, but her gaze did not detach from that, from what she still could not name, but which was already pulsating inside like an icy breeze entering through a crack in a barely closed door. The atmosphere was impeccable, perhaps too much. The cutlery shone like blades, the white flower arrangements were symmetrically positioned in the center of the table, and the dishes were served as if each gesture was part of a millimetrically rehearsed choreography. But the dialogues, these came empty. Comments on recent trips, praise for French desserts, restrained laughter that didn't echo in anyone's eyes. It was as if everyone was playing a role, trapped in an invisible and cruel script. Laura tried to dispel suspicion. It was Christmas. Maybe she was just sensitive, nostalgic. The first Christmas without her father would always bring up a confusing mix of memories, absences, and attempts at reconnection. She took a deep breath, clasped her hands under the table, and told herself that this time everything would be different, that the absence would leave room for a new beginning. That night would be about healing, not about old wounds. Nevertheless, something in the air said otherwise. Something in the brief glances exchanged between Marcos and Helena, something in the prolonged silence of the mother, who barely looked up from her plate. Between one starter and another, Laura stared at her freshly poured glass of wine. The red liquid seemed denser than usual, perhaps because of the ambient light, perhaps because of herself. The waiter had left her there with a quick gesture, as if he didn't want to be noticed. She brought the glass to her nose, inhaled lightly, returned it to the table. A normal gesture. But then he realized the waiter didn't leave his side. He was a few meters away, pretending to line up cutlery from a neighboring table, but he was watching her sideways. And as they met glances, he immediately turned away, but not before transmitting something, a mute warning, a signal hidden in the rush of his gaze. The image of the father came back with force. That man who never missed Christmas dinners, who made a point of repeating that the table is sacred because it reveals who is on it and who pretends to be. Laura felt a tightness in her chest. Since his death, everything had changed. The promises of unity that Marcos had made at the funeral evaporated into months of silence. No link, no visits, and now everyone there, dressed in peace, but exuding war. And at the center of it all, she, legitimate daughter, guardian of a will that no one else seemed to remember. Or did they remember too much? As she pretended to participate in the conversation about investments and real estate, Laura felt her skin stand on end. The words came out of her with effort. The wine remained intact. And the waiter, he was there, still close, still restless. Everything seemed too beautiful, too aligned, too comfortable, and this reminded her that danger is almost always polite, well-dressed, and punctual. In the background, piano bells rang a Christmas carol. But for Laura, the perfect night was beginning to show its cracks. And it was at that moment, between one toast and another, that she realized that she was being tested. It was not just another supper. It was a meticulous staging. Something had been set in motion, something that had a definite date, time, and perhaps a definite goal. And although he still didn't know why, his intuition whispered to him something as clear as the wine standing in his glass. Tonight, it wasn't about celebration. It was about survival. As the waiter walked away with restrained steps, Laura tried to return to the surface of the conversation, but her words now floated amid murky memories that emerged like ghosts in the lighted room. The presence of his brother, there in front of him, evoked images of an unresolved past. The muffled fights after the burial, the blank stares when it came to the will, and the icy silence that settled between the two like a wall. Helena, always by his side, seemed more like a strategist than a wife. Laura recalled how she had volunteered to take care of her father's paperwork, saying she wanted to lighten the burden of her sister. But what was seen later was disappearance, manipulation, and closed doors. With each fake laugh on the table, a fragment of this story pulsated inside her. Laura's mind, as if sabotaged by the environment that tried to ignore the past, projected scenes interspersed between mouthfuls and smiles. He remembered the day when his father, still lucid, told him about a special clause in the will. There is something that will be revealed next Christmas, and only then will it all make sense. At the time, it didn't seem important. The pain of illness eclipsed any future subject. But now, in that restaurant where everything seemed out of place, that promise returned as a key piece. She wondered if everyone there remembered this conversation too, and if, by any chance, this reunion had been carefully arranged to coincide with the exact date. The voices around her kept talking about trivialities. The new resort Helena discovered in Aspen, the supposed expansion of Marcos' Chicago office, but none of it felt real. They were words that danced in the air like soap bubbles, colored on the outside, but hollow on the inside. Laura could no longer hear without filtering. Everything now passed through an internal radar that measured intention, strategy, pretense. And the worst, she realized that it was not paranoia. There was, indeed, something rehearsed. Even the way Helena held the glass and spied on Mark seemed to follow a mute rhythm. From time to time, his eyes sought the waiter, who now served another table, but maintained a restless posture. Laura began to connect the dots, too small to form a drawing, but numerous enough to make her feel uncomfortable. The father had always said that the biggest mistake a person can make is to ignore their own hunches. And that foreboding grew like a stain under a luxury carpet, silent but impossible to hide for long. The mother's behavior also did not go unnoticed. Silent more than usual, she ate slowly, without participating in the conversations. It was as if she had been asked not to get involved. Laura couldn't remember the last time her mother had seemed so oblivious, or maybe she was just surrendered. When she tried to bring up a subject about the old orphanage where her father made donations, her mother only nodded with a pale smile, as if responding out of obligation. This was even more alarming than any rude gesture. The absence of reaction, the veiled connivance. Back to the calculated gestures, Laura noticed an exchange of glances between Marcos and Helena when the waiter approached the table again. That mute complicity made her wonder if he was just an employee or part of something bigger. But at that moment, something broke inside her. The waiter placed another plate in front of her and, as he leaned in, let out a heavy look, not of fear, but of something even more disturbing. Feather. Feather? Why? That was deeply silent. The last time anyone had looked at her like that was at her father's wake. The contrast between the environment and what was going on inside, it was suffocating. The restaurant was a living painting. Refined music, gleaming cutlery, laughter that echoed like Christmas bells. But inside Laura, all that was noise. She was beginning to feel that this dinner wasn't a celebration. It was a carefully crafted staging, with each dish serving a purpose that went beyond the food. What if she was there not as a guest, but as the centerpiece of something planned since the previous year? And then, between a forced laugh from Helena and a comment from Marcos about new beginnings for next year, Laura felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. For the first time that night, he was absolutely sure that it wasn't just the environment that was wrong. She was surrounded. And I didn't know where the next move would come from, but I was sure it would be subtle, elegant, and fatal. Dinner was at its pace, almost hypnotic, when the waiter returned to the table bringing the special red wine of the house. An old label bottle, sealed with golden wax. He served Mark first, then Helena, and finally bowed before Laura with a quick gesture. The cup was placed in front of him with precision, but something came along. A small, folded, barely noticeable piece of paper stuck under the foot of the bowl. Laura didn't notice right away. She was distracted, watching her brother toast with exaggeration. But when the waiter walked away, his shoulders tense and his gaze fixed on the floor, something inside her screamed to look again. And there it was. A note, discreet, almost invisible under the glow of the crystal. She waited for the right moment. He pretended to look for the napkin, bent his body, and with a subtle gesture, pulled out the paper. He unfolded it under his lap, with the discretion of someone who hides a dangerous secret. The shaky letters seemed to be written in a hurry. Don't drink anything that is served to you. The world stopped for a second. The piano continued to play, the cutlery clinked, the conversations continued. But for Laura, everything was distant, muffled. He felt his heart race, his blood running cold in his veins. She looked around. Everyone seemed distracted, but she knew that from that moment on, every look could be a trap. The note weighed like lead in his hands. There was no signature. There was no indication of who had sent it. It could be a misunderstanding. Could be a bad joke. But the way the waiter avoided his eyes said otherwise. Laura followed him with her gaze as he walked away down the side corridor. He didn't look back, but his whole body seemed to scream for her to understand the gravity of what she had just read. The most primitive instinct took over, distrust, and fear, a dry, lucid fear that does not warn before it arrives. She took a deep breath, trying to disguise the trembling of her hands. The paper was hidden under the napkin. The family laughed at something Helena said about her father's fortune well used. The words cut like invisible blades. The phrase, which could seem banal to anyone, sounded like a provocation to Laura. The wine before her had now become a symbol, a poisoned chalice of memories, rancor and greed. She pressed her lips to the glass, staged a toast, smiled, and faked a sip. The liquid barely touched his mouth. He put the glass back on the table with the lightness of someone who doesn't want to attract attention, and the precision of someone who has just escaped death without knowing how. But nothing went unnoticed at that table. Helena watched. Mark watched. Even the mother, oblivious, seemed to notice the gestures too much. Laura knew that, from then on, any wrong reaction would give away her fear. So he did what the strong do when they are surrounded. He acted. He laughed, commented on the dishes, praised the chef, even risked a joke about the lights flashing too much on the ceiling. Every word was a mask, every laugh a trench. Meanwhile, the note burned under the white cloth, reminding her that danger could be as close as the touch of a glass. Time seemed to lengthen. Dinner continued, but Laura could no longer hear anything. The sound around him had become a distant hum, like the echo of a bad dream. Her brother talked about new business opportunities, a phrase that always preceded scams and betrayals, and she could hardly believe that, at that very moment, her life could be at risk. He tried to decipher the scene with his eyes. Each one's wine, the cutlery, the dishes, the rhythm of the conversations. Everything gained meaning, and every movement of the waiter, no matter how small, seemed like a coded message. There was a moment when Marcos's gaze crossed hers. It was brief, but sufficient. There was anxiety in her eyes, a kind of expectation Laura had known since childhood. It was the same look he had when he lied, when he hid something, when he expected her to make a mistake. Only now, there was something darker there. He wanted to see her drink. I wanted to see the sip. Laura dodged, pretended not to notice, and commented something banal about the decoration. But inside, the whole body pulsed in a rhythm of alert. The soft notes of the piano seemed to mock the tension. Silent Night, played slowly, echoed through the room, turning the dinner into a theater of ironies. Silence, calm, and peace. Words that have never been so far from reality. Laura observed the details as if trying to memorize a scene to witness later. The golden sparkles, the laughter, the cutlery crossing the air. And in the center of it, the cup, untouched, a symbol of resistance. A reminder that sometimes life depends on choosing not to drink from what you are served, even if everyone calls you ungrateful for it. And as she disguised her fear with a polite smile, Laura had the distinct feeling that this night was just beginning. Something much bigger than a family conspiracy was unfolding before her. That note was not an isolated warning. It was a message from within the enemy camp itself. And if anyone inside that restaurant wanted to save her, it was because the danger was closer than she dared to imagine. Laura stood up with the delicate excuse of touching up her makeup. Her voice came out firm, but her heart hammered against her chest as if to warn her that something was about to happen. Marcos's gaze followed her, suspicious, but he limited himself to smiling and commenting something quietly to Helena, who let out a forced giggle. Laura walked across the room trying to appear calm. Every step was measured, every movement studied. She felt the weight of the note hidden in her coat pocket, and with every inch of distance she gained from the table, she breathed a little more. But it was not relief. It was strategy. She knew she couldn't run away. Not yet. I needed to understand who was an ally and who was a threat. And it all started with the waiter. The only one who dared to warn her. In the discreet corridor between the halls, she saw him. He was standing by the wall, fiddling with a tray as if organizing utensils. But when he saw her, the waiter just looked up, as if he was already expecting her. She approached without saying anything, her body slightly bent, as if looking for the bathroom. And then, as if commenting on the aroma of wine, he whispered, "Were you the one who left the note?" The boy nodded almost imperceptibly. "You need to get out of here. They're trying to poison you." The words, even spoken in an almost inaudible tone, sounded louder than any song. Laura maintained her posture, didn't look around, just took a deep breath, as if listening to a compliment. But inside, the adrenaline skyrocketed. It was not an assumption. It was a plan, and it was in progress. The waiter spoke fast, looking at his own feet, as if reading a script hidden in the floorboards. He said that he had overheard a conversation between Marcos and a man in a dark suit, a lawyer, perhaps, in a call the previous afternoon. They spoke of closing the matter today, that everything needed to seem natural, that no one would suspect a sudden death after an imported wine. Laura felt her fingers freeze. This was no longer a dinner. It was a lethal staging. And the stage was her. The fathers will seem to be at the center of everything. The hidden clause that would only be revealed that Christmas. Now it made sense. She was the obstacle between Marcos and total control of the inheritance. And Marcos, always elegant, chose the most sacred moment of the year to act. "You can't trust anyone," the waiter muttered. "Not even at those who smile at you at that table." Laura remembered her mother's look. Empty. Submissive. Was it possible that she also knew? That he had agreed? The questions tore her inside, but she knew she couldn't collapse there. Not yet. They're testing you. They take turns on the plates, change the glasses, observe if you notice something out of place. If you have an oversight, it's enough. The waiter promised to help her. He said that in changing the main course, it would create a distraction so that she could leave. But he warned, any sudden movement could make everything fall apart. If they realize that, they will accelerate the plan. Laura returned to the salon with slow but accurate steps. The pine scent coming from the decor seemed to mock her. It was as if Christmas, that date of love, forgiveness, and rebirth, had been hijacked by dark intentions. When she returned to the table, everyone feigned surprise. Mark stood up to pull out his chair. "We were missing you," she said with a smile that hurt because it was so fake. Helena cracked a joke about the queues in the women's bathroom. The mother just looked up and looked at the plate again. Laura smiled, but inside, she mentally mapped all the faces, glasses, and cutlery. It was like being inside a play where the audience didn't know she knew the tragic ending. From then on, everything began to be observed with different eyes. The waiter now circulated between the tables with the care of a spy. The dishes came in different order, the glasses seemed to multiply. Laura realized that her original glass was gone. In its place, another with the same wine, but in a changed position. A test. A game. She had to act as if she didn't notice, but she couldn't fall into the trap either. He put his lips to the edge, but did not drink. He pretended to taste it. He pretended to swallow. And deep down, he felt that imaginary sip might have saved his life. There was no time for hesitation. Every second at that table was a dance between life and death, and she had to look gracefully oblivious. Helena started a conversation about traveling to Europe, trying to look natural. Marcos talked about investments in Texas, but his hands betrayed the tension. He held the fork with excessive force. Laura responded to everything, with rehearsed phrases, like someone playing an emotional chess game. But within himself, he traced the next step. I needed to get out of there. He needed to access the will. I needed to find someone who could prove what was happening. But most of all, he needed to survive that dinner. And now she knew that silence was her only protection. The game was set, and the board was made of porcelain, silver, and veiled intentions. In the last bite of the entrance, Laura watched the waiter from a distance. He made a slight movement with his fingers, like someone playing the piano in the air. It was the signal. The distraction would come with the main course. She took a deep breath, smiled, and prepared herself for the next move. And there, between flickering candles and programmed laughter, she realized that silence had become her only voice. A secret language, an invisible shield. But even though she mastered the game of silence, she knew time was running out, and the next move would be decisive. Laura walked away from the table under the pretext of calling a friend who was depressed at Christmas. The waiter, attentive, had already started the promised distraction. A purposely fallen fork, a customer complaining about the point of the meat, a slight spill of wine on the towel. As the eyes averted, she slid through the luxurious aisles of the restaurant as if she knew the backstage of an opera. The bathroom was on the right, but she went to the left. He passed through doors with restricted access, shelves with crystal glasses, and a darker corridor, where he finally found the young waiter, waiting. He looked pale but decisive. "You need to know everything now, or he won't have time to react later," he said, almost breathless. He took a small envelope from his apron pocket. "I found this in the manager's office, where your brother was this afternoon. I don't know how long he will be there." Laura picked up the paper with cold hands. It was a partial copy of the original will, with an important note at the footer. Final clause revealed only on December 25th of the year following the death, exclusively to the heiress of record. The name highlighted in cursive, Laura Bennett. She felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. All the questions now had an answer. She was the rightful owner of the property, the shares, the future donations. And they knew. She never knew because the clause was hidden, separated in an annex that could only be opened on that date. And now, there she was, alive, and on their way. The waiter explained what he had heard. Marcos was talking to a lawyer by phone about the difficulty in removing the main obstacle without leaving a trace. They mentioned a substance with a rapid cardiac effect, difficult to trace, and the advantage of being in a restaurant where the service would be the last to be questioned. The idea was to make it seem like a sudden illness, a tragic coincidence in the midst of the emotions of a festive dinner. Laura felt her body freeze. Trust, what sustains us in family relationships, had been broken like porcelain thrown to the ground. And worse, his mother, his only possible ally, seemed to have chosen silence as a position. Helena, on the other hand, became more and more the cold mind behind the plan, while Mark executed as the cordial face of a clean crime. The feeling that everything had been set up for months, maybe more, began to burn inside her. The canceled lunches, the ignored messages, the brothers' lame excuses. It all made sense now. The distancing was not by chance. It was preparation. While she lived through grief and rebuilt, they strategized. It was not enough to exclude Laura from the management of the estate. They wanted her to disappear, elegantly, without scandal. And Christmas, ironically, had become the ideal stage. A date where tears and commotions would be accepted without question. Where chaos mixes with affection, and where a scream can be drowned out by a Christmas song. Laura held the envelope as if it were her own heart exposed. His mind worked in 1,000 directions. I couldn't run. I couldn't scream. He needed to keep his disguise. The waiter suggested that she leave through the back, use the employee corridor, reach the service entrance, and take a taxi. But Laura hesitated. If I leave now, they win. They count on my fear. And more, the will, if it disappeared or was invalidated by alleged escape, could be legally contested. She needed witnesses, of evidence, of time. I needed to gain a few more hours. And at that moment, he realized that he was in the middle of a war where guns were smiles and bullets came in crystal cups. The waiter insisted. They'll realize that you already know. His hesitation, his flight from wine. They're not stupid. But Laura looked him in the eye and said, "If I leave now, they'll erase everything. We need to make them reveal themselves." The plan changed at that moment. She would return to the table. It would turn the tide. He would pretend, laugh, make a toast. But he wouldn't drink. And if the cup changed hands, who knows, maybe fate would take care of the rest. It was risky, dangerous, but it was the only chance. And there, in the dark corridor of a luxury restaurant, among porcelain plates and family secrets, she decided to fight. Not with violence, but with intelligence. Take it easy. With silence. With cunning. The waiter looked at her for a long moment. "If you don't get out of this table alive, I swear I'll tell you everything," he said in a trembling voice. Laura just nodded. He put the envelope in the inside pocket of his coat, took a deep breath and walked back to the hall as if stepping on a minefield. Step by step. The piano played a serene melody, and the guests laughed. Nothing had changed for the others. But for Laura, everything was different. The weight of truth was a shield, and also a risk. She knew that once she was back at the table, she would have only one chance. A single wrong move could be fatal. And then, as he approached the table, he saw Mark raising the glass. "Laura, we were waiting for you for the toast of reconciliation," he said, his eyes fixed on her. By her side, Helena adjusted the necklace around her neck, while smiling like an award-winning actress. The mother wiped her eyes with her napkin. The world was organizing itself for the final scene. But what they didn't know is that Laura was no longer the woman who had arrived there that night. She knew, and she was ready to play the game, to the end. Laura returned to the table with soft steps, an upright posture, and a faint smile on her lips. The kind of smile you learn to carry when you're in front of predators in family skin. The waiter had disappeared for the time being, as part of the plan. The room seemed to be on hold, as if everyone felt that something was coming, but without knowing what. Helena arranged the cutlery in front of her with an almost ritualistic precision, while Marcos, still with his napkin folded in his lap, raised the glass with a calculated theatricality. "The night deserves a toast," he said, as if directing a carefully rehearsed scene. Eyes turned to Laura. It was time. The toast of reconciliation, as he called it. Apparently symbolic. But she knew what was contained in that gesture, or rather, in that liquid. With a calmness that even she didn't know she had, Laura took her glass. The same glass changed, the wine identical looking, the same deep red tone that now seemed denser, more loaded with intentions. She didn't tremble. The performance had to be perfect. The trick was in the eyes, in the rhythm of breathing, in the absolute control of one's own body. He raised his glass slowly, without blinking, staring at Marcos as if greeting an enemy with flowers in his hand. "To the family, and to the truth that time reveals," he said, in a firm, clear, cutting voice. An ambiguous phrase, enough to confuse and frighten. For a second, Helena averted her eyes. The mother lowered her face. Mark kept his smile, but his eyes gave it away. He knew there was something wrong. The toast was made. The glasses touched each other with an elegant, almost sacred tinkling. Everyone drank, except Laura. She touched her lips to the crystal, leaned slightly, but did not ingest the liquid. An old trick, which he had learned from his father when he was still a teenager. Simulate a sip without absorbing a drop. As he pretended to taste, his eyes scanned the table. And then, in an almost imperceptible movement, she swapped the position of the cup with Mark's, without him noticing. A simple gesture, like someone who arranges the space in front. Marcos, distracted by his own toast and theatrical euphoria, did not notice. And minutes later, he himself raised the wrong glass, the one intended for Laura, and drank it in one gulp. A fatal mistake. a detail that would change the fate of everyone at that table. The effect was not immediate. For a moment, everything seemed to continue normally. Laughter, praise for the main course, promises of family reunions. But then the first signs. Mark stopped speaking in the middle of a sentence. He put his hand to his throat. He coughed lightly. Then, with more strength, Helena watched him with unease. Laura didn't move. I watched everything with fixed eyes, as if witnessing the outcome of a tragedy already written. Mark tried to say something, but his voice failed. He coughed again, this time with effort, his eyes widening in panic. The mother finally noticed. "Marcos?" he asked, in a tone that mixed concern and incredulity. And it was at that moment that the chaos began. The waiter appeared at the back of the room. He was standing still, motionless, watching. His eyes crossed Laura's. She didn't wave. He didn't smile. But something was said in the silence between them. Helena stood up, knocking over the chair. Mark now bent over, his hands on the table, his elbows shaking, sweat running down his forehead. People at the surrounding tables began to turn around. The murmur grew. "Is everything okay?" someone asked. "Call a doctor," shouted another. And then the sound of the glass falling and shattering on the floor. Helena held her husband's face, screaming his name, but he no longer answered. The veins in his neck were marked, his skin turned pale, his eyes were glazed. All in a matter of seconds. And Laura, stop, static. A part of him screamed. Another just watched. The restaurant plunged into chaos. Employees ran, customers stood up, screams took over the hall. The light seemed brighter now, almost aggressive. The music ceased. And in the center of it all, Marcos's body falling next to the chair, surrounded by screams, running and despair. Laura was pulled by her mother, who was crying. "What's going on? What happened to him?" But she didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the floor, where a small drop of wine slowly flowed between the boards. The same wine that, seconds before, she had pretended to drink. The same wine that now came out of his brother's half-open mouth. Helena turned suddenly, facing Laura. His eyes weren't just filled with pain. They were filled with hatred, and something even more dangerous, conviction. Didn't have to say anything. The accusation was all in the eyes. To all present, Laura was the cold woman who did nothing while her brother died. The one who didn't get up, didn't despair, didn't ask for help. The one he watched. And that was enough. The narrative was already forming. The whispers gained strength. She didn't drink. She was the only one who didn't touch the glass. They were arguing before. The police were called. Ambulances arrived. The waiter disappeared. No one saw him again. When they asked his name, no one knew. There was no record of it in the system. No plug. No contract. It was as if it had evaporated. A ghost. A guardian angel. Or an unlikely accomplice. The only proof Laura had. It was gone. And in the middle of the room, surrounded by looks, sirens, and screams, Laura realized. Even though she had survived the plan, even though she had exposed, unintentionally, the true danger of the night, now she was the face of tragedy. The silence that once protected her, now condemned her. Everything was out of control. The plan she didn't devise now rested on her shoulders. And when a policeman approached with a serious look and clipboard in hand, she knew that the nightmare would not end there. Not in that restaurant. Not that night. Because the real poison. He was never alone in the cup. It was in the unspoken words. In disguised intentions, and in the truths that no one wants to hear. The red and blue lights of the vehicles reflected on the restaurant's windows, transforming the once golden and elegant environment into a kind of purgatory. The voices were now dry, technical, official. Police officers delimited the perimeter, asked for documents, took statements. Paramedics tried, hopeless, to revive Marcos, while clients were told to remain seated. Some filmed with their cell phones, others whispered like vultures around the carrion of the scandal. Laura was sitting at the same table as before, but everything around her had changed. There was no longer a soundtrack, no aroma of wine, only the smell of metal, sweat, and fear. And in it, the silence was still the same, but now not as protection, but as a sentence. A policeman sat in front of him. He was calm, methodical, with a notebook in his hand and an arched eyebrow. "Could you tell me what happened?" he asked. Laura hesitated. How to explain something that seemed like a script written in silence? How can we tell that it all started with a note without evidence, delivered by a waiter that no one would find? She tried. He told about the will, the clause, the ticket, the exchange of cups. But the policeman's expression remained unchanged. He wrote everything down, but without changing his gaze. At the end, he closed his notebook and said, "Do you understand that, in the current state of things, all this seems extremely convenient for someone who would inherit a fortune and who has not drunk from his own glass?" She did not answer. There was no answer that seemed plausible enough for those who did not experience fear. The truth, at that moment, became just another version without prestige. Marcos's body was taken under a white sheet. Helena cried furiously. Her tears didn't come from grief, they came from the narrative that was taking shape. That Laura, motivated by ambition, planned her brother's murder. And with each repetition of the story, among employees, witnesses, family members, the version was strengthened. Laura's mother, in shock, only muttered that she couldn't believe what was happening. But his neutrality hurt more than any direct accusation. It was as if she said, "I don't know if it was my daughter, but I'm not going to defend her." That left Laura in a way that nothing had broken until then. The absence of the mother, the hesitation in front of the daughter, was like the denial of her existence. Being accused by strangers was bearable, but being abandoned by themselves, this was unbearable. While police officers collected evidence, broken glasses, crockery with fingerprints, half-full bottles, Laura searched with her eyes for the only face that had believed in her, the waiter. But he had disappeared as if he had never existed. No employee remembered him. He was not scheduled that night. No badge, no name, no token. It was like a ghost, an anonymous angel, or perhaps an invention of the mind itself, as they later suggested. "You're in shock, ma'am," they said. But Laura knew. He existed. He saved her. And now, his absence was one more piece of evidence used against her. Without him, his story was nothing more than a convenient theater. The world does not accept miracles without witnesses. The original will also became the subject of doubt. The copy in his coat pocket was seized, but Marcos's lawyers disputed the veracity. It may have been faked, they said, or recently modified. And since the original could only be officially read by a judge, the legal dispute was launched. Helena, now a widow, became the guardian of the assets temporarily, and began a subtle but public campaign to destroy Laura's image. He insinuated in interviews, blurted out comments on social networks, cried in front of the cameras. She was always jealous of her brother, he said. She never got over her father's death. And with that, even without evidence, public opinion tilted. The truth, Laura understood, has no value when it is not convenient. And worse, when it threatens power. Laura was released that night, but left through the back doors. The reporters' flashes weren't for her, yet. But she knew that she would soon be her face in the headlines. heiress daughter involved in Christmas poisoning mystery. There was no prison yet, but there was exile. The friends disappeared. Co-workers avoided contact. The house was empty. The phone silent. The price of truth was isolation. The inheritance, which was supposed to represent justice, became a curse. And Christmas, once a date of remembrance and nostalgia, would now be synonymous with accusation. She walked around the house listening to echoes of the past. Her father's voice, the old laughter, the clinking of pre-war glasses. And I thought, what is the point of being right if everyone wants me to be wrong? But there was something that no one could take away from her. What she saw, what he experienced, and what he decided. Laura could have run away that night. He could have left it all behind. But he chose to stay. He chose to face it. And that, even in the midst of chaos, was a quiet victory. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come from courts. It comes from a clear conscience. From the intimate knowledge that, no matter how much the world distorts, you have not betrayed yourself. And in that silence of the room, with the sealed envelope of the will still intact on the table, she swore to herself that she would not let them bury the story along with the memory of her father. The next day, a letter arrived at his door. No sender, without a seal, only the name Laura, handwritten. When he opened it, he found a note. The truth is not dead, but it is in danger. The handwriting was different from the first note, but the impact was the same. She folded the paper, kept it in the same envelope as the will, and looked out the window. The snow was still falling. But now, the silence was not just loneliness. It was preparation. She wasn't done. And he knew there was still someone watching. Someone who knew more. And maybe, someone waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The city looked different when Laura crossed the door of the building that morning. The same place where she had lived for years now seemed far away, like a set for a movie she was no longer a part of. Christmas had passed, but the decorations still hung in the streets, the lampposts still lit up with golden cords, and shop windows displayed snowmen that seemed to mock what was left of their celebration. She walked slowly, with no exact destination, her coat tight against her chest as if she wanted to protect not from the cold, but from the emptiness that now dwelt inside. The snow fell fine, delicate, but without the lightness of previous years. Now, each flake seemed to weigh tons, and each step left a mark that disappeared seconds later, as if the world insisted on erasing any trace of it. There were no more voices. There were no more sirens. There was no more hurry. Only the muffled sound of solitary footsteps on the newly formed snow, the rustling of trees parched by winter, and the silence. A silence different from the one she had worn as armor. This one was dense, sharp, a silence that spoke, that screamed inside her. Who repeated the last words he heard from the policeman, his mother, the newspapers, social networks. Everyone had something to say. All had versions. But no one listened to what she really experienced. Laura kept walking. The streets seemed endless. The windows reflected his face in a distorted way, as if even his image was fragmenting over time. And yet, she didn't stop. There was something inside her that pushed her forward. Something between anger and hope. The anonymous letter was still in the inside pocket of his coat. The truth is not dead, but it is in danger. She had read those words dozens of times. He memorized the T stroke, the way the author used punctuation. It was a clue, a sign. Someone out there knew everything. Someone was watching her. Not with threat, but with a kind of silent care. It was comforting, in a way, but also terrifying, because the absence of certainties had become his new normal. Laura stopped in front of a small square covered by snow. Empty benches, bare trees, a half-melted snowman. He sat on the farthest seat, feeling the cold through his clothes. I needed to feel it. She needed to remember that she was still alive. The Belvedere restaurant was now closed, wrapped in yellow security tapes and covered glass. There was an official note on the door, temporarily interdicted for investigations. But for her, it wasn't just a restaurant. It was an invisible cemetery, an altar of corrupted memories, a theater of war where peace was just a facade. There died the version of the family that she tried to believe still existed. There was born another version of her, more sober, firmer, less naive. And in front of the white-covered square, she realized, no matter how much they wanted to hide the truth, it would no longer be silenced. Even if I had to scream silently, even though no one was listening yet. The city remained indifferent. People took selfies with hot coffees, children played in the snow, couples discussed overdue gift lists. The world turned, as it always does. But inside Laura, something stopped. Time froze. The scenes from the night before came in flashes. The clinking of glasses, Marcos's wide eyes, Helena's look of hatred, the absence of the waiter, the blank stare of her mother. Everything came back like an eternal echo. And even though she knew she would never have all the answers, she no longer needed them to move on. Because there was something greater than knowing. There was feeling. And she felt it. She felt that, although she was alone, she was not defeated. And that was new, unexpected, powerful. As he rose from the bench, his bones aching and his face numb from cold, something caught his attention. A black car, parked across the street. Dark windows, engine on, property. As if expected, a shiver ran down his spine. For a moment, time seemed to stop again. Would it be the police? Helena? Someone from the past? Or the waiter? She didn't know, and there was no way to know. The car did not move. It just stayed there, watching. And in that icy silence, anything seemed possible. The good, the evil, the truth, the lie. The next turnaround. Laura clutched the note in her pocket, stared at the car for a few more seconds, and decided to turn her back. Not out of fear, but because, at that moment, she preferred to let the answer come to her. As he took the first step back, something fell out of his pocket without him noticing. The ticket. The same one he had received the night before. The one who had saved his life. It fell softly on the snow and stood there, half covered, folded. And the car across the street then moved. Slowly, no rush. He accelerated and disappeared at the street bend. Laura turned around, but it was too late to catch up with him, or to understand what had just happened. He approached the paper, now wet, almost erased by the snow. He picked it up carefully, and there, before the words had completely dissolved, he reread the message that had changed his life. Don't drink anything that is served to you. The wind picked up. The bells of a nearby church began to ring. It was 6 in the afternoon. Christmas had passed. Winter does not. Laura looked up at the gray sky and took a deep breath. She was alive, even if accused, even if alone, even if marked. And at that moment, he realized that the real poison was not wine. It was the silence of those who knew. It was the weight of omission. But now, she also knew how to use silence, as a shield, as a sword. And with this new power, he turned again and walked. Snow was falling on her hair. Footprints were erased behind her. But inside you, something was finally taking hold. No matter how long it took, she would find justice, or he would die trying. In the end, Laura wasn't just the survivor of a dinner party. She was the woman who dared not to swallow the poison she was expected to accept with her eyes closed. And maybe, this is the bravest decision anyone can make in life. Because there are a lot of people out there serving lies with gold cutlery, smiling as they sharpen their intentions, toasting while silently drawing their downfall. And the most dangerous, it's just that many times, it's people who say they love you. Today's story is not just about inheritances or poisons. It's about how not every danger screams. Some just watch, wait, and toast with you. So, the question that remains is, how many times have you accepted what you have been served, just to keep the peace? How many times have you silenced your intuition, swallowed hard, smiled, when everything inside you was screaming, "That's wrong"? Perhaps you are also surrounded by smiles that disguise intentions. Maybe your intuition alerted you and you didn't. But the good news is, there is still time. There is time to look again, to refuse, to get up from the table. Because sometimes, survival starts with a simple no. And if today you feel that something is not right, don't ignore it. Now I want to know from you, if it were with you, would he have been drinking? Right here in the comments. I read every single one of them. And if this story touched you in any way, like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. That was just a story, but maybe has been yours.